8. No longer caring about halal and haram. Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "There will surely come a time when people will no longer care about where their wealth comes from, whether it is from halal or haram means." Al-Bukhari, Al-Buyu, Hadith, No. 2083. Explanation: this hadith indicates that the values of the early generations of Muslims have shifted from seeking halal things and avoiding haram things to a heart disease that is more concerned with accumulating wealth without caring about the prohibitions of the Sharia in seeking it. This phenomenon shows that religious values have faded from people's lives as the fiqh mu'amala is eroded from their lives. In its place come various manipulative methods that are far from any religious and moral considerations. In addition, this hadith also gives an indication that people in a certain era no longer pay attention to the Sharia side of running their business. It is likely that our current era is what is meant in the hadith. Anyone who pays attention to the ways of doing business will find that there are many shades of haram, or speculative. This fact is not only known by those who are experts in the science of Islamic law and understand the problems faced by Muslims today, but also by ordinary people. For example, we have seen the rise of ribawi online services, credit cards, that are spread throughout the Islamic world and play a significant role in driving the economy of the ummah. We see that these services have been widely accepted by the people, and their use has become more widespread. Try to compare this with other things, such as gambling, collusion, or manipulation and perjury by traders. Not to mention commodity trading, which is clearly haram in the eyes of Sharia. Of course, what we have just said cannot be generalized to all Muslims, and there are some who are still wara and very careful to obey Allah's commands. But what concerns us is that there is a general phenomenon that has had a profound effect on the lives of Muslims, indicating the widespread and wholehearted acceptance of an economic system that is not based on the Sharia as described in the hadith. It is almost certain that today, there are very few people who do not use riba as a means of doing business, or at the very least, they are exposed to the dust that is spread by the various riba-laden transactions. The hadith above does not indicate the general condition of Muslims regarding their indifference to halal haram, but the facts that exist today seem very clear, which in previous centuries were not so visible. Symptoms. On the other hand, there is a hint in another hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, that indicates that this phenomenon will become more prevalent, and that in those days, halal wealth will become very valuable. Among these hadiths are, almost the best possession of a Muslim is a sheep that he grazes on hillsides and pastures to follow his shepherd, who avoids the threat of fitna. Al-Bukhari, Al-Fitan, Hadith No. 7088. This hadith refers to a time when halal sources of fortune are very difficult for a Muslim to find, to the extent that halal and haram have been mixed with different levels in all types of work, and it is rare to find purely halal sources of fortune. 9. Miserliness and individualism. Allah Almighty says, "And they preferred the muhajirin over themselves, even though they were in distress, and whoever is preserved from selfishness, they are the fortunate ones." Al-Hazar, 9. The meaning of yutsaruna in the verse above is to put the interests of others in world affairs ahead of oneself, while the opposite is al-atsra, which is a selfish attitude, or what we know better as individualism. Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, reported, "The Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, invited the Ansar to be given a share of cultivated land in Bahrain. So some of them said, 'O Messenger of Allah, if you do this to us, then do the same to our brothers, the Quraysh.' But he did not do this. Then he said, 'O Messenger of Allah, if you do this to us, then do the same to our brothers, the Quraysh.' But he did not do so. Then he said, 'Indeed, you will witness individualism after my departure. Be patient until you meet me.' Al-Bukhari, Al-Musica, Hadith, No. 2377. This hadith shows the virtue of the Ansar, their solidarity, and their loyalty to their fellow Muslims. Usaid ibn Hudhair radiyallahu anhu reported, an Ansar man came to the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and said, O Messenger of Allah, do you not appoint me as an employee? You did so and so. He replied, be aware that you will meet the age of individualism after me. So at that time, be patient until you meet me at Al-Hawd, the pool in paradise. H.R. Al-Bukhari, Manaqib al-Anshar, Hadith No. 3792. The meaning of al-Atsra in the above hadith is an attitude that is always selfish in every condition, coupled with greed to get what is due to others, and only enrich themselves. From Lunyu Masud radiyallahu anhu, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, one day you will find individualism and things that you do not like. The companions asked, when that time comes, what will you tell us to do? He replied, fulfill the rights of others and ask Allah for yourselves. H.R. Al-Bukhari, Al-Manaqib, Hadith No. 3603. In the narration of Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, is narrated as follows, during the distribution of the Fi of the Hawazin, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, gave 100 camels to some of the rulers of Quraysh, while the Ansar were given nothing. What he did prompted some of the Ansar to say, may Allah forgive the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He has given the Quraysh and left us behind, yet our swords are still wet with their blood. Anas radiyallahu anhu continued his story, when this was reported to the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. He sent one of his companions to the Ansar, so that they would gather in a dome made of earth, without leaving anyone behind. When they were all gathered, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, came to them. He said, what is the meaning of the words that reached me from you? One of the Ansar said to him, the most knowledgeable among us. These are the most clear-headed, did not comment on this matter at all. But some of us who were just teething commented, may Allah forgive the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, for giving to the Quraysh and leaving us with nothing, while our swords are still wet with the blood of the Quraysh. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, verily I gave to some of the Quraysh, because they were fresh out of disbelief. Would you not be pleased if they went away with the wealth I gave them, while you would remain with your messenger to continue the struggle? By Allah, there is no better favor to lead their hearts than the wealth I gave them to turn their hearts to faith, but the wealth I gave them. Finally, they all realized their impudence, and said, all right, O Messenger of Allah, we are all willing to accept your policy. Then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to them, undoubtedly, you will encounter a time full of individualism after me. So be patient until you meet Allah and His Messenger in Al-Hawd. Then Anas ended his story, unfortunately, we were not patient. H.R. Al-Bukhari, Al-Fard Al-Qams, Hadith No. 3147. Wail ibn Jur radiyallahu anhu reported, I heard the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, answering when he was asked by a man, O Prophet, what do you think if those who rule over us are leaders who only ask for their rights to be fulfilled, while they do not fulfill our rights? He replied, listen to them, and obey them, for indeed they will bear what they do, and you will also bear what they do. He replied, listen to them and obey them, for they will pay for what they do, and you will pay for what you do. Muslim, Al-Lamara, Hadith No. 3417. Explanation. The noble verse above shows the privilege of the early generations of Muslims regarding their zeal in competing for the happiness of the hereafter and the love of some Muslims for others. They also favored their fellow Muslims, especially the Ansar, over their Muhajirin brothers when it came to worldly matters. This trait was the most dominant trait for the first generation of Muslims, especially the Ansar. These were people who preferred what was in the sight of Allah and His Messenger over the interests of the world, which is doomed to perish. And the first hadith hints at the spiritual maturity that privileged the companions. The hadiths that follow hint at the depravity of the Muslims, who have been immersed in competition for the world and pounce on each other, the selfishness of some of them towards wealth, and the efforts of some of them in preventing others from getting their rights. Furthermore, the Bayt al-Mal has turned into a private institution of the rulers and aristocrats and their henchmen, whereas it was established to serve the Muslims as a whole. This is a latent danger as well as a perversion of the Rabbani people who have been chosen by Allah to lead the world. Anyone who takes a close look at the history of the Muslim Ummah will find that what the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, reported above, is no idle talk. This is among the proofs of the Prophet's prophecy. And this sign was felt by one of the early generations of Muslims among the companions when he lived in the midst of the Umayyad dynasty. We note that Anas radiyallahu anhu, who saw this individualism, said, "Unfortunately, we are all impatient. Whoever looks at the course of history will find that the conditions of the Abbasid Dawa and its aftermath were no better than those of Muawiyah's Dawa. In fact, they became even worse. The rulers favored people they liked to occupy public positions, even though they were not trustworthy and capable. They were more concerned with satisfying their stomachs, without caring about the fate of their people. Meanwhile, the funds released by the rulers from Bayt al-Mal for the people are not in accordance with the portion they should receive. Some people also underestimate this sign of the Day of Judgment, among other signs, whereas it is precisely this sign that has the greatest impact, as we feel today. You may not have forgotten that the first fitna that took place among the Muslims was the result of Caliph Uthman, may Allah be pleased with him, prioritizing his relatives in the government over other Muslims. Although Caliph Uthman was still just and took care of the rights of his people, and refrained from betraying them, it was his prioritization of his relatives that ignited the fire of fitna later on. Whoever pays attention to the fate of this ummah today will find that this fitna of individualism has overtaken the interests of everyone. Power revolves around a very limited group of people, while Muslims other than them, who are much larger in number, are prevented from taking part in improving their own lot. In fact, anyone who looks at the condition of Muslim foundations or institutions will find that the most cushioned seats are only filled by certain groups. The hadiths above also explain how a Muslim should behave in such a situation, as indicated by the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. And then he should ask Allah for what is due to him, not expecting his rights to be fulfilled by society, not repay individualism with the same attitude. And be patient until he meets the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, at Al-Hawd, the pool in paradise. Thus, a Muslim who has behaved in this way is not contributing to the ignition of this fitna, because he has fulfilled the obligations that his Lord commanded him to fulfill. Likewise, the rulers and those who have been ruled by individualism, and those who have wronged their people, they will be rewarded for their actions. Some people think that the attitude of a Muslim to avoid the vices of individualism and exclusivism with the various steps we have mentioned, and what the hadith indicates, is only a passive preventive measure that does not have a significant impact on changing the condition of Muslims who have deviated. Today, this is not the case. In fact, what the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, advised is the most correct attitude from any point of view. Because in such a situation, every Muslim is faced with two equally bitter choices. Firstly, if one seeks to revolutionize a nepotistic government, one is faced with another equally bitter reality. This is because such an endeavor is prone to igniting internal conflicts, the consequences of which are far worse than any other condition. And it is not uncommon for this to lead to vilification of those who spearheaded the movement. The second is to be patient and let the rulers get on with their nepotistic ways, for which they will bear their own sins. While this passive attitude is easier for everyone to adopt, it is better for the sake of preserving the lives that will be lost and for maintaining the unity of the Muslim Ummah. 10. Motor vehicle car discovery. Allah Almighty says, "And Allah has created the horse, the mule, and the donkey, that you may ride them and make them ornaments. And Allah has also created that which you do not know." An-Nahl 8. Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "There will come a time when vehicles belonging to the devil and houses belonging to the devil. As for the vehicles of the devil, have seen it. One of you will go out with camels that are driven without passengers with goods laden on their backs, so that the loaded camels will not stop when one of their brothers stops his journey for a ride. As for the houses of the devils, I have never seen them." Then Sa'id said, "I have not been shown these houses, but baskets as big as camels, covered with many silk cloths." Sahih al-Musnad 405. Explanation: this hadith describes two events that happened to Muslims. First, the emergence of proprietary vehicles, demons. Secondly, the emergence of demon-owned houses. The description of Satan's vehicles is given in the hadith as camels that are prepared for luxury and pride, rather than for religiously justified purposes. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, then explained the similarity between these vehicles and those of the devil, namely, that the loaded animals are lined up in an orderly manner, and when their owners pass by a person who does not have a ride, the vehicle is not stopped to give him a ride. Meaning, the camels actually had enough capacity to carry people who needed a ride. But because of the stinginess of their owners, the camels were left empty of passengers and prioritized their luggage. As for the houses of the devil, the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said that he had never seen one. This means that at the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, nothing like it had ever been seen, and even nothing with the same attributes that he told his companions about had ever been seen. This thing is something completely new, and this ummah will definitely find it exactly as it is described. The hadith also explains that what is meant by the devil's house may be a vehicle that resembles a house, which when traveling with its owner, passes by his brother, who does not have a vehicle, but does not want to ride in it. Indeed, the idea of a vehicle that looks like a house was unthinkable in ancient times. But today, modern means of transportation have proven what the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said several centuries ago. Container trucks, caravans, and luxury cars equipped with various facilities prove the existence of the devil's houses, as said by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If indeed such cars or vehicles are what is meant in the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, then they exist in our own time.